Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 2099. The topic is training, and the title is Common Training Mistakes. This past week, I was traveling up to Chicago. I was training in a commercial gym during my time up there, and I'm going to sound absolutely snobbish. I understand this. But I really don't like commercial gyms anymore. I've been training since I was 16 years old. I got to train at my house. My parents were amazing and wonderful and loved me enough to let me take over one side of our two-car garage. I got to build out some equipment. They got me an awesome weight set up to 300 pounds, got me this weight bench that allowed me to do leg extensions, leg curls, decline flat, incline presses, and it had uprights that would extend. So on the back side of the machine, you could do squats, you could do dips. There was a lot of really good things I could do on that. And then I had a heavyweight bag, speed bag, a couple other odds and ends. It was a wonderful setup. So I used that for the majority of my workouts. And then our high school had a weight room, but I lifted in there. But I usually just get kind of like free weight stuff. I saved my super intense workouts for at home when I was by myself. So I really liked that. Then whenever I went to, my undergrad, I started at Pitt University of Pittsburgh. And they had a large gym for their students. And then there was also a small little 24-hour gym in the freshman dorms, and I was always the only one in there. But they had some machines, but it was nice because I was by myself. And then when you went to the student gym, you put headphones in, you just kind of don't look around too much. And then kind of the evolution of gyms went from there, where it was a mixture of small private gyms or a home gym, plus also some commercial gym exposure. And then I trained at commercial gyms, I trained at private gyms. Just commercial gyms are just a hodgepodge of a mess, to be honest. A lot of the people in there don't really know exactly what they're doing. They're not super aware of what their surroundings are. And it can just be frustrating to try to get a really good quality workout because it's busy. People are usually in the way, and when they're in the way, they're doing something dumb. So I sound like such a jerk. But like the example the other day, I went in and I was like, well, I'll start with some chest fly. There was a chest workout. So I was like, I'll do some kind of chest fly. I'll do a free weight press, some kind of machine press. Then maybe I'll end with like cable crossovers, just another fly. I have short upper arm bones, so my triceps tend to take over on my pressing movements. So to better grow my chest, I like pre-exhausting my chest with chest flies, and I like to finish with chest flies because I can kind of just use up whatever intensity I have, and it's usually a pretty good finish just to get a mad chest pump. So that was the routine I wanted. Now, I did want cable crossovers last because I feel like they get a really good stretch compared to a machine chest fly. So I wanted that stretch and the ability to play with angles so that way when I got to that stage in the workout, if there was any area of my chest that kind of still felt like it wasn't fully exhausted, I would be able to manipulate my position in order to get those fibers. So I went in and I was like, well, I'll start at the chest fly machine. And it was busy. That's not a problem. I understand that. I can just go do some warm-ups or calves or something until I get what I want. But the person on there was doing 5 pounds. They were doing reverse flies. Their arms were fully locked out the entire time. The weights were touching in between each rep. They were not in knowing what they were doing, so they were taking the weight way too far back. They were engaging everything but their rear delt. And they would do a set, and then I was like kind of sitting there watching them, and they did nothing for like 3 minutes. And it was only a set of 10 reps with 5 pounds, and they weren't even on their phone. They were just sitting there. And I was like, what are they resting for? Like, you didn't do anything that required a rest. And I couldn't see any physical limitation, couldn't see an injury. So I'm really trying to figure out, what in the world are they taking 3 minutes for? They're not even looking at anything. They're just looking at like a blank wall or something. I don't know what they were looking at, but they didn't have a cell phone. There wasn't anything happening in front of them. Luckily, they were just looking at the wall. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. What's going on? So they did their second set. And I walked over and I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I hate being this guy. I hate being this guy. Asking how many more sets you have. But if they're just sitting there for 3 minutes, they're not really looking like anything's urgent. Maybe if I let them know that I'm interested in using the machine, maybe they'll speed up a little bit, So I walk over and I was like, hey, excuse me. I said, how many more sets do you have? And he said 3. And I was like, oh, come on. Like, in my mind, I was like, you just did 2 sets of 5 pounds for 10 reps, and it wasn't hard at all. You're taking a 3-minute rest. You tell me you have 3 more? Like, ugh. So I said, okay. And I forget exactly what I said. It was something along the lines of like, oh, okay, thank you. And I just walked away. So I went and did internal, external rotators. I went ahead and did calves. And then he was still on the thing, and I was like, this is ridiculous. So I went and did dumbbell flies. So I skipped the chest fly machine because it was driving me nuts. And now I'm just ranting. But this is what happens at commercial gyms. It drives you insane. So I still got a great workout. And yes, I'm whiny and complaining that I didn't get to do machine flies. I had to do dumbbell flies. But they are different. Machine flies offer a better contraction for the inside edge of the chest, whereas dumbbell flies do not. So there is a small difference. I then had to modify how I did my cable flies to make sure I got more inner chest involvement because I missed the inner chest involvement that I would have gotten with the machine flies. So I had to do the cable crossovers different. So this is my head. This is unfortunately what happens in my head all day, and I don't know. It's probably not normal or healthy, but it is what it is. So after that rant, what I wanted to do, if you're still listening, was to highlight 3 common mistakes that I see when I go to commercial gyms. And the reason why I want to mention this is just to raise awareness. The people who are making these mistakes, I would be willing to bet money they have no clue they're making the mistakes. And I do not take the role of offering people advice unsolicited and just as some random dude in a gym. Like, they don't know me. They know nothing about me. They have not asked anything about my opinion. Like, they could probably care less what my opinion is. So I'm not going to just go around giving people advice. Now, in this podcast, I will. But in real life, I wouldn't. Now, I've had people tell me, like, oh, it'd be great, if I got advice. I'm like, that's rare. Good for you, because that's a good character sign that you're willing to take constructive criticism. But the majority of people do not want some random person telling them what to do. And you don't know anyone's background. I don't know what their injuries are. I don't know what their goals are. I don't know anything about them. So there are often multiple ways to perform movements that would be different per goal. And I'll even give you an example in a second. But you don't know any of that stuff, so I don't like offering advice because I don't know if it's actually even going to be helpful or it actually could be hurtful. And I would see this in our public gym is sometimes a well-intentioned member would give another member advice, but they don't know that this person's trying to deal with, sciatic nerve pain. So maybe they have really tight external rotators and they have to do a certain position to protect from that. But this person's like, no, you need to widen your stance, so you hinge more at the hip, and then you're just going to flare up the issue or cause them to pull their sacrum out of place. And it's like, you don't know anything. Don't ask. If people asked you, give the advice. If no one asks you, shut up. And that's my opinion. I guarantee I'm not right in everyone's eyes, but I just saw it as the owner of a gym and as a trainer, that when people who thought they were helping, it was maybe a 50-50 on whether it was actually helpful or hurtful. So I always coached my clients is just to nod, say thank you, but don't change anything. Do not change anything based on what we've taught and learned for what some random person in the gym tells you. Don't do that. Even if they seem to be big and strong, even if they've, accomplished a lot, they don't know anything about your history. They do not know you, so do not take their advice. And I've even asked that person and a couple people before in the gym to not do that, and they did not listen. They were just like, well, it's really helpful. I think it would be very helpful. And I'm like, oh, okay, you just want to seem important. Your importance is hurting other people, so calm down. So it was interesting conversations to navigate. Now, the 3 common training mistakes that I saw this week, and then what I would typically see in commercial gyms. Number 1 is improper working set intensity. Number 2 is having no plan or program. And number 3 is low technique quality. So number 1, improper working set intensity. Man, you saw the range everywhere from top to bottom. So some people will do 10 reps and just stop, and it's like, oh my gosh, it looks like you could have done 30. There was no intensity, and it wasn't a warm-up. You could see that they just did a few sets of that and then moved on to a different machine. And it's like, I don't know what you thought you were doing. You could have, the effort you gave was as if you were laying in bed, just like doing nothing. So that was a complete waste of time. It will cause absolutely no change whatsoever in the muscle tissue, would barely burn any calories. They might as well have just been in bed. So that's one thing you'll see is where people just get to a number like, oh, I'm supposed to do 3 sets of 10. I'll just do this for 10. And it's like, well, how many could you have done? And if they really pushed, they probably could have done 15 or 20. And it's like 10 at like a 70-ish% intensity is trash. It's going to do nothing. Like that's a warm-up set. That should be what you're doing for like maybe the first time you sit down on the machine, you're trying to figure out what weight to use. Then you would do maybe 10 reps at a weight you really could have done 15 to 20, but that's not working set intensity. That's not intense enough to cause the tissues to make any adaptation change whatsoever. So that's one mistake you would see with working set intensity is it just wasn't intense enough, not even remotely close. The other was the other end of the spectrum is it was super high intensity. They were going too heavy or pushing like too far into failure that the range of motion was absolutely trash. The number one exercise I saw this mistake on was tricep press downs. People wouldn't do a full range of motion of a tricep press down. They would do some weird partial little mini extension and then let the weight slam at the top. And then they kind of, do their 360 turn while they're resting, making sure everybody's looking at them, that kind of thing. And it's like, oh my gosh, we're only looking at you because you're an idiot. I'm not looking at you because you did anything amazing. But that would be one thing is the range of motion is so damn short. The other mistake people would make is they try to be so intense that they just move too damn fast. And I saw this in the overhead press machine, which also still had really horrible short range of motion. There was an older gentleman on there, and you start the machine at the bottom, like where you're supposed to just start every single rep, is like around like just under chin height with your hands. He pressed it all the way to the top over his head, and then I would be gracious to say the range of motion was 3 inches from the top. So just like little mini extensions, like boop, 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 boop. There's little tiny mini extensions, and then he just let the weight slam, and I'm like, I would love to have been able to ask without like insulting, just out of genuine curiosity, what he thought the effectiveness of that was. Like, are you aware that you're not moving to any normal range of motion, like any appropriate level of range of motion? And if you are aware, why? What do you think you're doing productively from what you're doing? And it's just curious, like just genuinely curious. Typically, the answer is going to be that they have absolutely no clue that they were doing it wrong. I remember, I'm full of side rants today, so hopefully you're okay with this. But in the gym one time, we had our lat pull down. It was like a cable station, basically, an adjustable cable station. And we had a couple sets of handles. I think there was 8 handles that would be on there. And each handle had its own hook. So a person got done on the machine, they had taken a hook off the left side, and when they put it away, they put the handle away, they just put it away on the right side over top of another handle. So there's 2 handles on one thing, and now there's an open peg with nothing on it. So I remember I asked him, I said, just out of curiosity, I said, you can absolutely think I'm a jerk, I understand, but I don't mean it in a jerk way. Just out of curiosity, why did you put the handle back there? And they looked where they put the handle, and they looked at me, and they go, what do you mean? And I said, why did you choose to put the handle back on that hook? And they looked at me like dumbfounded, like it was the weirdest question in the world, which I'm sure it probably felt like. And they just looked, they go, like, I remember it was like a weird pause, and I said, well, I'm asking because I like to try to keep the gym organized and make it easy for whoever the next person is to use a machine. If every handle has their own hook, you can just grab the handle off that hook. When you get done, you put it back on that hook. But if people put them back in weird places, or you double up, somebody has to take off your handle to take the handle that they wanted, then they put your handle back on that peg, which didn't belong on that peg, and then it just cascades. So being the owner, watching the videos, you would see one person put something away wrong, somebody doesn't know how to respond or adjust what they're doing to that, so they put another thing away wrong, and then all at the end of the day, you have like 40 things out of place you have to go around and try to fix. And I explained to him, like, I saw you put your handle back on top of another handle rather than on the same peg that you picked it up from. And he said, oh man, I didn't even think of it. And I was like, yep, that's the answer that I expected, because he's not going to be like, screw everyone in this gym, bunch of assholes, I'm going to layer this handle on top of another handle. Like, nobody's going to do that. Everybody was very nice. They were all very good members. But it's just odd that just there's no awareness to it. And I understand that I'm going to be hyper aware as the owner and the person has to fix everything. And then also, this is like, the gym world is my world. And, if I went with a buddy who like did fishing, I don't know anything about fishing. And I guarantee I'll do like 10 things wrong etiquette wise, just because it's not my world and I don't really know what the etiquette is. But then the same aspect is, part of me is like, it doesn't take understanding nuances of gym etiquette to just understand, if I pick this up here, I should put it back here. So that's a little navigation into my thoughts, but that's often what I would see with the intensity of what people were doing. Is I believe they were completely unaware that what they were doing was right or wrong. So if they just do 10 reps, but they could have done 15 or 20, they are unaware. They're just like, well, I did 3 sets of 10. The program says 3 sets of 10, or I believe I'm supposed to do 3 sets of 10, so I just did 3 sets of 10. And it's like, yeah, but it's 3 sets of 10 of high intensity effort. And they're like, well, that's not what I knew. Like, I just knew it was 3 sets of 10, so I just did 3 sets of 10. You're like, okay, fair enough. Then the people that did really high intensity, and they shortened the range of motion and or went way too fast, they just know, hey, my muscles felt really uncomfortable, and that set was challenging, so my muscles they're probably going to grow from that. But then you have to answer and say, well, actually they're not, because the range of motion was way too damn short. You didn't engage enough muscle fibers, and or the movement was way too fast, and it was really just momentum that was kind of happening rather than an actual muscular contraction. So the muscles would burn, it'd be uncomfortable, but they weren't actually challenged in the right stimulus style to produce growth as an outcome. More so, you would have gotten maybe some muscular endurance out of it. That's about it. So it's just really the lack of awareness that the intensity is right or wrong, and that the intensity being right or wrong will completely dictate whether they get any results at all, or what type of results, what type of response they get from the body. Second thing is, people seem to really not have any clue what they were doing, like plan-wise, no intentionality to their exercises. Like, I watched a couple kids come in and do like bicep curls, 3 or 4 exercises of bicep curls. Then they did back rows and pull-ups and pull-downs, and I'm like, man, kind of supposed to do that in the opposite order. Is it going to build big biceps? Yeah. Is it going to build bigger backs? Not really, because you're just going to fail the back movements because your biceps are pretty exhausted. They're already too beat up. Another example is just me creeping on people, basically. But I saw a kid do chest flies. Then the machine right next to it was the overhead press machine, so he did that. The machine right next to that was the ab rotation machine, so he did that. Then there was a machine for cable crunches, and then a leg press machine. So he just went right down the wall, doing 3 sets of 10 of everything, and then walked out of the gym. And I'm like, oh dear God. Like, whoever set this gym up did not set it up as in like a circuit. Like, you're not supposed to just follow the pieces. It would have, maybe that would have been helpful if they did, because sometimes people do train that way and they don't understand, doing a chest machine, the chest fly, then an overhead press, then 2 ab exercises, then leg press. I doubt that was intentional, because it's not even full upper body. Like, you missed all of your back. You didn't train anything for back. And chest flies is your only chest exercise, isn't going to be sufficient Like it's just out of order and random. And it's more so evident because it was just literally the machines down that single line against the wall. So if people don't have a plan, they tend to do things inefficient. So maybe there's a better order to certain exercises that makes a better outcome. So that's not helpful if you don't know that. You don't have any efficiency to what you're doing, so you're spending all that time, but you're missing out on the benefits. Or they just kind of meander around. You don't really build up the intensity, the excitement, the enjoyment. You just kind of get the workout in and you go home. That's not really motivational. That's not something that's going to fire you up to come back. So when people struggle with being consistent in the gym, not having a program can be a huge reason why, because they don't really have a goal for the day. They don't have like, here's, I'm going to do this, then this, then this, then this, and I'm going to have a great workout. It's just, this one's open, I'll just do a couple sets of this. That's open, I'll just do a couple sets of this. It's not very motivational. It's not exciting, right? So we want to make sure we have a plan. Then the third mistake was low technique quality. It was extremely rare that anybody was performing anything correctly. And it was just even small nuances, like a guy was doing cable, I think he was doing cable flies or like crossovers, but he also was turning it into like an odd press motion. But he was rotating his hands to an overhand position at like the contraction of the movement, which would overly engage his front shoulder. I don't think he was trying to do presses, because it's a really inefficient way to do presses because you have nothing pushing against your back to stabilize you and brace you. So I think he was trying to do chest flies, but he was rotating his hand from neutral to overhand at the peak contraction, which is only going to cause more front shoulder engagement, not actual chest engagement. So he would have been better off leaving his hands neutral or even creating a slight V, where his pinkies are ever so slightly closer to each other than his pointer fingers. So his hand rotation was the wrong way. Now that's super nuanced. You also saw people just doing things absolutely crazy. There was a couple that were doing, a couple young guys doing bicep curls, and they were being very mindful to hold themselves and set up in a position where they got a really full extension. So they must have learned that the extension position of the bicep curl is very important for creating muscle tissue damage. However, when they would curl to the top, they would curl to the point where the cable actually lost tension and their hand almost fell into them. So at the bottom, they had this extreme stretch tension, crazy position. Like if they would load any heavier, they would have ripped their bicep off. But then at the top, they had absolutely no tension whatsoever. They actually lost tension. So you're going from like 100% intensity to 0% intensity every single repetition, and there's no way that would be beneficial, so it wasn't intentional. So they just didn't recognize that they were doing that. They weren't making that mistake. I also saw people doing machines where they just let the weights touch between every rep, and they weren't working on explosion. They weren't working on like connective tissue tolerance for weight load acceptance. There was no fancy techniques. They just literally didn't know what they were doing. So the machine was touching between every single time, so they were losing muscle tension between every single rep. Dumbbell presses that were only like the top 50% of the range of motion, so little mini tricep extensions. Leg presses that were only the top part of the range of motion with like hyperextended leg lockout. Good God, it was scary to watch. So just the technique of the movements was really, really, really low. So the reason why I decided to make the podcast, other than what seemingly looks like I just wanted to rant about things, is all of these were unknown to the person. They didn't know they were making these mistakes. So it reminds me of a quote that I really like is, you don't know what you don't know until you know that you don't know it. So again, you don't know what you don't know until you know that you don't know it. Meaning they didn't know this. So if I make a podcast and it increases someone's awareness of these concepts, now all of a sudden being more aware, they can realize whether they're making these mistakes or not. And if they find out, holy crap, I was making this mistake, well, now you know what you didn't know, and it can be improved. It can be better. So that's the idea, is if anyone listening to this is making any of these mistakes, like I would encourage you in your upcoming workouts to think through these concepts. Make sure you're paying attention to your workout intensity. Do you have a program? And there's free ones online. We have free ones online. And then pay attention to your technique quality. Those 3 things are going to make a huge, huge impact on the results and the outcome of your efforts. So pay attention to those things and make sure you're maximizing them. So how can we do that? How can we maximize them? Is we want to have a plan. So you want to have a program. There are tons of free ones online. If you're not sure where to start with any free one. We have a couple free programs on our website, www.brutalirongym.com, so you can check that out. To be honest, I don't even know where else to look. There's a billion things on YouTube. You can just type in free whatever program. So if you want to lose fat, say free fat loss weight training program. If you want to build muscle, free muscle building weight training program. And then, start with that. Is that going to be the best thing to start with? Hell no. But it gets you something. And it also makes it not sound like I'm asking you to pay me to make you a program. You don't have to pay someone. There are free ones. So just start with that. See how you like having a plan. If you like having a plan and then you want it to be more personalized, then you would hire a coach or get an app or something that can help personalize the programs more specifically for you, not only the equipment you have, but also your abilities and like the way you're shaped, the way your strengths and weaknesses balance out. You want to have stuff that's nuanced and personalized for those components. The second thing I would do is watch tutorial videos. I actually still watch like videos if I run across somebody who looks like they're doing like a how to deadlift video and it doesn't look like it's filmed in their mom's basement. So there's a little bit of snobbishness there, but if it only has like 12 views and it's filmed in someone's basement, I still might check it out because I have before, but I might skip that one. But I do actually watch like how-to videos, and I send, every time I send a client a program, every single exercise has a tutorial video linked to it. I have a document that I use that is, let's see here, it's a Microsoft Word document. It's 329 pages. There's an average of 18 tutorial videos per page. So 18 times 329. So that's over 5,000 exercises. And that's what I rate my clients' programs using that document. And I will add exercises to that document every week, basically. If I see somebody moving and I'm like, oh man, something like this would be very interesting, but it's not on my page, not on my document, I'll add it. I'll go find the tutorial video on YouTube and add it. But I have over 5,000 exercises that I pull from, and I just use the Control F function, which is Control Find. And I'll just type in like, oh, okay, let's see if I want somebody doing like a strict press, a strict overhead press. I'll just type in strict overhead. And right now that pops up. And we have a strict overhead press with extended pause, strict overhead press with slow eccentrics, the regular strict overhead press. We have strict overhead press into push press if you want to help overload the eccentric. We have a strict overhead press from a dead press. There's a ton. so all those variations are in this document that I put in here at one point in time. And I'm always building to the document. But the reason why I say all that is me having to find the videos to put into that document means I've watched at minimum that many videos. Plus, I've watched more because I would have watched one or two that I didn't like something about the way the person did it until I found the one I really wanted. And then I don't have the time in my life to make all 5,000 videos myself. I would love to. So some of them are me teaching, some of them are other people teaching. It's just if it's taught well, I'll use that video. But I've watched all of those and infinitely more. And it has helped me perform technique as correct as I know how to perform it every stage of my lifting career. So even back when I was 16, 17, 18, I was watching videos on RX Muscles in the Iron Asylum with Dave Palumbo. I remember that was like my first video exposure to people working out. And then bodybuilding.com had an exercise tutorial guide, which was amazing because they had these models and you could pick like a body part. And you'd pick like, say, biceps. And it would be like, here's 200 exercises for biceps. And you're like, this is awesome. So I would just perform them Like as I went, like, okay, exercise 1, I'm going to try that tonight. Exercise 2, I'm going to try that tonight. And I would just watch the tutorial video, make mental notes or actual physical handwritten notes, and then I would go downstairs and try to perform that movement like I saw that person do. So I actually studied tutorial videos from the get-go, from 16 years old. When I first ever touched a weight, I was starting to perfect how I did it. And that helped and made a big difference. So you want to pay attention to the position of the person, how are their feet, where are their hips tilted, what are they facing with their chest and their shoulders and their face, like where are their eyes looking. You want to look to their body position. You want to look at the full range of motion that they're using, the speed in which they're moving. You want to try to mimic absolutely every aspect of the video as much as you can. Then the third thing we'd want to do on how to correct common mistakes is our workout intensity. We want to push to the edge of failure. So you don't want to lose technique quality, like obviously to the point where you get hurt, but more so you don't want to involve muscles that aren't the targeted muscle. So you want to lift where the quality is still very high, but you want to push to the edge of that quality breaking down, and that's going to give you great practice at pushing to failure. You don't want to push like into failure. You want to push to failure. So one of the ways I would coach people to do this is if you're doing 3 working sets. The first working set, you want to pretend like you're being filmed for a tutorial video. Like someone's filming you and they're going to say, I'm going to send this to everyone I know about how to perform this exercise correctly. So you don't want to only use like 2-pound weights and have it look dorky and too easy. You want to use a weight that's challenging, but you want to look absolutely perfect. So you'll stop once you believe the next rep couldn't be perfect. Then the second set, you can actually push a little bit more. You can push into the quality, maybe being a little variance where you might say, oh man, I start to feel myself shifting a little bit on that last rep, so I'm going to stop now. So where you feel like something's starting to kind of break down, you would stop. Then the third set, you want to stay safe, but you actually do push to where something really does start to like break down. Like, oh man, okay, my pacing started going too fast. I couldn't control the eccentric, like the lowering portion of the movement. I could definitely feel that was an ugly rep, so I'm going to stop there. So we go from pretty to ugly across 3 sets. And that gives you a nice balance where people say, should I, how intense should I lift? Should it always look like really hard or should it only look perfect? Both. Start perfect, end with it really hard, that kind of thing. So that would be the best ways to address the common training mistakes that I saw in commercial gyms. So again, the mistakes were improper working set intensity, not having a plan, and low technique quality. So we want to be aware of those things. We want to address those things and improve in those things. Awesome. Well, if you need anything, check out our website. We have free programming examples on there. We have nutrition information, a bunch of other training information, and good stuff on there. So it's www.brutalirongym.com. And then if you have any questions, if you need anything, you can click on the Contact Us page on the website and send me any message. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people we share the podcast with, the more people the podcast can help. If you like the podcast, please consider donating to support the podcast, which you can do on our website. And then we actually do have our YouTube channel and our Instagram channel where I do share training, insights and technique videos and stuff. So check both of those out. And if you do, make sure you give us a like and a follow. But they're both on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.